Hello and welcome to, this is day 11. This is week 6, day 11. It's going to be pretty short today. I only have a couple slides to talk about, 10 through 13. 2 Roman numerals I'm going to cover. The Yalta Conference of 1945 and then the Holocaust. So, the Yalta Conference is important because it's the last time that Stalin, Churchill, and Roosevelt are together after, it's February 4th through 11th, 1945. And after that, in April, by the time we get to April, Roosevelt has died. So shortly after the war ends, Churchill will also be out. So this is the last time that Stalin gets together for a meeting and these people are all there. All right, so the purpose is for the Allies to figure out how they're going to occupy Germany and how they're going to stabilize Europe and put things back together after the war. So it's the reestablishment of nations, really, because you have to remember that it's not just Germany that's destroyed at the end of the war. They fought through France and Belgium and Holland and Luxembourg, and those countries have all been destroyed. They've fought all the way through Italy. That country is destroyed. And of course, the countries to the east, Czechoslovakia, Hungary, Romania, Poland, all these places also need to be put back together again. So what would the plan be? And as far as Germany is concerned, the idea is that they will divide Germany into 4 chunks. The English will have a zone, the Americans and the French will have a zone, and the Russians will have a zone. In the end, the American, French, and British zone will become a new country, and that country will be West Germany. The Russian zone, because of all the events that occurred at the very end of the war and what is now considered the beginning of the Cold War, the Russians aren't going to give their zone back. They're not going to allow the reunification of Germany. They're going to keep that zone and use it as a buffer between the Soviet Union and Western Europe. And the trouble is, in the center, if you look at the slide, I think it's 12. In the center of East Germany is Berlin, and they all agreed that Berlin would also be divided into 4 chunks, which means there's an American, British, and French zone in the center of Russian-occupied Germany. And this will become known as West Berlin down the road. So it's on the Elbe River in April and early May that the Americans meet up with the Russians and coming the other way. And they all agree that self-determination for the Germans and support are to be given to the Germans instead of what happened at the end of the First World War of kicking them while they're down, which just led to another world war. Instead, they're going to pick them up, dust them off, put the country back together, and move on. And the fundamental problem is you've got 3 democratic capitalist countries saying that, and you've got 1 communist command economy country saying that. And they will both rebuild Germany in their own image. So, and that'll lead to the Cold War. The other thing that happens is that the truth and the reality about the Holocaust become very clear. The Russians are the first ones to discover camps because they're moving through East Prussia and occupied Poland. And a lot of people don't realize that over half the camps that were created by the Germans for the final solution were actually created in Poland so that the German people wouldn't see any of that. German Jews were rounded up and sent off to Poland. Places like Auschwitz. So the Russians generally tend to get to these camps first. They're the first to call in the Red Cross, to call in the media, to say, oh my God, look at this, look what's happened. Camps were designed specifically to exterminate whole populations or as slave labor camps. And so not every camp was designed simply to just massacre everybody that came to it. Many of the camps were designed as forced labor camps, and they were only of a certain size. So as people came into these camps, once the population group was where it needed to be, the Germans would just get rid of all of the surplus population, especially the sick and the weak who had been there for a long time, and replace with other people. So the reality of these camps was kept from the average German. But I mean, Germans weren't stupid. They knew that people were disappearing, but they also, the average German citizen, knew to keep their mouth shut and not ask any questions. So it's very well known about over 6 million Jewish people who died in the Holocaust. But what is not as well known are the large numbers, hundreds of thousands of Gypsy, also known as Roma, Poles, Russian prisoners of war, thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of all of these people also. And then in the work camps that were not specifically extermination camps, people were dying all the time as well. And then on top of that, you have the German population itself that was not even part of the extermination camps. And I'm talking about people like people with special needs, people with medical issues, people with Down syndrome, people that had mental handicaps or physical handicaps. The Germans exterminated those people as well. And German families were just expected to hand over their loved ones to go off to some medical facility, and a few weeks later they received some notification that the person has died. So just the sheer amount of death caused by the German regime really is shocking, and it goes far beyond the loss of the Jewish population, which was the heaviest as far as civilian population go. And it's not just German Jews, of course, it's Polish Jews. It's any country they went into. I mean, if you think about Anne Frank, she was a German Jewish family, but they escaped to Holland where they thought they were safe from all of that. And then Holland gets invaded in 1940, and they hide until 1944 when they are exposed, and then they're sent off to the camps. So, of course, the Nazis are going to be put on trial for all of this when the war comes to an end. They're called the Nuremberg trials, and many of them will be executed. Many of them will get jail sentences. But it never, they will, the story of hunting down Nazis all over the world who have somehow escaped justice up until the 1960s, 70s, sometimes the 1980s. For goodness sakes, there was a guy in Detroit, his name is Demjanjuk, who ended up being arrested, I think in the late 1980s, and the trial went on through the 1990s or something. And I think the guy died before it was all over with, due to age. I don't know. Anyway, the legacy of what the Nazi government had done to the population of Europe and the western half of the Soviet Union is just catastrophic. Not only that, their own population, the German civilian population, by the time we get to 1945, was just incredibly decimated through air bombing and through battle casualties for simply being in the way. I mean, you talk about the fact that the Russians will lose 250,000 guys capturing the city of Berlin. The German civilian population in Berlin lost at least that many, 250,000. By the time we get to 1945, it's hard to get a really clear edge, a really clear number on casualties, because the casualties are so catastrophic that even the people keeping record of the casualties become casualties, and therefore nobody's keeping records. So it's pretty bad. So when we get together on Wednesday, we'll talk about the end of the war in Europe, and then in the last week we'll talk about how the war ends in the Pacific. So that's all I have for you today. Everybody, enjoy the beautiful weather as we approach the last couple of weeks of school. Seniors, I think we have Wednesday. That's it. So, okay. Talk to you soon.